I work at a data center. It's at a small warehouse/office place. My job is to just stare at a monitor and make sure all the systems stay online. If anything goes down, I head to the operating rooms to usually just give it a quick restart. It's a really simple and easy job, and because it's overnight and just me, I can really do whatever I want, so long as I don't have to I'm constantly checking the status of all the systems. Although, I'm sure you can tell just how boring it can get sometimes. By the time this happened, I'd already seriously considered quitting several times, but forced myself to stick with it. Anyway, this night, I drove over to the office at my usual 10 p.m. The building was at the end of a long road and backed up to trees, so there were never any cars or people in the area. I parked and headed up to the office. This week, I had a show on Netflix that I'd been binging for my entire shifts, so after giving the computers a few checks, I immediately set up my laptop and started watching my show. For reference, there's usually no trips in any of the systems during my shift. Since it's overnight, there's less of a load on everything, so it's less likely anything will happen. I'd say maybe twice a week there would be an outage, and it'd only be a single system that I can quickly just restart and get working again. I think I got through just about 2 episodes of my show, so it was about 2 hours in when I saw a notification pop up on the monitor. One of the systems lost connection. I paused the show and got up. I walked downstairs and through multiple corridors until I got to the huge storage room that was the main hub of the data center. There were massive rows of shelves all throughout the room. The notification I got had a row and section number. I walked down the aisle and over to the correct section. It happened to be the very last row and the section on the far corner, and strangely, it was really obvious why it was down. The main power cable wasn't plugged in. It was laying on the ground, like it had been pulled on or fallen out somehow. I really didn't know how that was possible. In all my years of having the job, I'd never seen a heavy-duty cable randomly fall out like that. It just doesn't happen. Regardless, though, of however it happened, I plugged it back in and booted up the system. Everything came back online and seemed to be properly. The obvious and really only answer to fall back on was that it did somehow just wiggle out of the socket. Maybe over time it slowly shook out, and it just so happened to fall out tonight. I did a quick walkthrough of the rest of the aisles, checking for anything else while I was down there. Then I started heading back through all the corridors and back to the office. As I was in one of the corridors, I heard an unfamiliar sound. It was almost like a heavy door thumping closed in a doorway. It was a little creepy sounding, especially with there being no other sounds in the entire building. Unfortunately, I didn't really know the rest of the layout of the warehouse, so if it actually was a door, I had no way of knowing which door, or where at. And although it sounded like a door, it very well could have been anything else. This was a massive warehouse, and often the metal pipes would bend and creak in the walls, or make similar thump sounds. It was just that exact sound I hadn't heard before. I made my way back to the room and sat down. I double-checked the systems again, then continued my show. Only a few minutes passed by, and I'd barely even gotten through one scene before I heard what sounded like a couple of fast-paced footsteps scurrying through the corridor next to me. It gave me a quick jump scare, but I got up and opened the door, looking down the hallway. There was nothing there, just an empty corridor with a door on the far end. But it sounded like it was just outside of the office I was in. I knew I wouldn't be able to keep my mind off of it if I didn't take a look around. I walked toward the end and opened the door. When I did, and looked down the next hallway, I barely saw the door on the other end, closing, like someone had just went through it. My heart was pounding now. I cautiously walked further up, and opened the door. This one led to a hallway with multiple office doors in it. Is someone in here? Hello? My voice echoed through the corridor. I took a few steps inside. It was eerily quiet, not the slightest sound throughout the building. Were they hiding in one of these office rooms? As that thought creeped into my head, I got really unsettled and decided not to go any further down that hallway. I took one step back toward the door, but just when I did, one of the office doors next to me swung open. I only caught a glimpse of a man running out of the unlit room before I turned and booked it out of there. I could hear his footsteps echo behind me as I made it to the next corridor and into the staircase. I didn't want to risk getting trapped, so I took the fire exit door and just ran out into the parking lot. Once I got closer to my car, I started calling the police. Whoever was in there didn't chase me out the same exit though. The cops made it pretty quick and did an extensive search of the entire building, which took nearly half an hour, but the guy was gone. Probably ran out a different exit and into the woods behind the building. Him being in there explained a lot though. The wire that had been disconnected earlier in the night was on the corner section, which the man probably bumped into while sneaking around. The company I worked for did a huge investigation to review security footage and try to figure out how he got in and if he stole anything. I didn't get much information on it, however, because I'm not authorized. I think it's pretty clear that whatever he was in there for, he likely didn't want me to know and was probably planning to prevent me from blowing his cover. How he would have done that after leading me through the corridors, I'm fortunate enough to not know. I worked at a local pizza shop in my mid-20s. It was just a small place that did deliveries and had a few tables inside for dining in. In all honesty, the food wasn't that great. The only thing that was really special about the place was that it was open 24/7, so any not-so-sober people would usually come in all throughout the night. I often worked alone, but I didn't mind it. Actually, I preferred it. None of the food was hard to make, and whenever it was slow, I could usually do whatever I wanted while waiting around. This night was no different than any other, at least to start. I headed in at 9 p.m. and took over for the day manager. There were no special tasks or anything that I had to do that night, and with it being a Tuesday, I was prepared for a chill night. I prepped some of the workstations in the back and just waited for any orders to come through. I got a few customers in the next couple hours, but then it went radio silent. No walk-ins or calls. I pretty much sat on a chair in the back of the kitchen and scrolled on my phone the whole time. But around 1 a.m., I heard the bell by the door ring, which happened every time someone opened the door. I got up and walked to the front where the counter was, but I stopped as soon as I could see the main room. Nobody was in there. I stood in place and looked side to side, but there wasn't anyone at all. A short smile broke across my face as I walked further up and quadruple-checked that nobody came in. I found it funny, like I must have been so used to hearing that sound all night long that my brain was playing tricks on me now. Being sure it was nothing, I went back to my chair in the kitchen. I really didn't think about it at all after that. For the next 15 minutes, there were still no calls or customers until I heard the bell ring again. This time, I wasn't even watching a video when it happened, so I knew I actually heard it. I got up and walked into the main room, but stopped in confusion again. Nobody was in there. After a second, I walked up to the front door and opened it, sticking my head outside and looking up and down the sidewalk that went along the building. There was nobody out there, not even any cars in the parking lot. I wouldn't say I was really scared or creeped out, but more so just really confused. I messed around with the door for a little bit, trying to see if it would ring without opening, but it didn't seem to. This was really weird, but I didn't know what else to do about it. I stayed up front for a while, at least 30 minutes, waiting for the door to ring again, but it never did. So I went back to the kitchen. It was between 2 and 3 a.m., which was always the slowest time of the night. Unsurprisingly, once I was in the back again, only a few minutes went by before the door rang again. This time, I stayed sitting and listened for anyone. I didn't hear anything, but just to be safe, I called out, "Hello? Is someone out there?" I got no response. I figured it was just the door doing whatever the hell it was doing, so I just ignored it and stayed back and continued on my phone. Somehow, there wasn't a single customer for a whole hour after that, so basically the past 3 hours were completely dead. It was 4 a.m., so for my last hour, I had to start prepping everything for the next shift. I got up and went to the front. I started counting the register from the few orders I had at the beginning of my shift, but while I was there, I felt strange. Something just felt off. I kept looking up at the empty room ahead of me and back at the kitchen behind me, feeling like I was being watched or something. I thought it was just the unusual nature of the night I was having, with the door and everything. I was just thankful my shift was over soon. Another couple minutes went by, when I suddenly heard a thump on the floor behind me. It was just like a boot stepping on the ground, which instantly sent a chill through me and made me quickly turn around. I felt my breath leave my lungs. There was a man standing just 5 or 6 feet away from me. He had all black, ripped-up clothes and a hoodie draping over his face, stopping just above his eyes. His eyes were bloodshot and hollow. I don't know if he was drunk or high or what, but he clearly wasn't sane right now. Then I saw his left hand was holding a knife. His knuckles were white from how tightly he was clenching it. I stayed motionless, trying not to escalate anything, but after several seconds of him not making a move and just staring at me, I decided to speak. "Hey, listen, you can have the cash from the register. I won't say anything. Please just let me go," I said, trying to say anything I could to get out of this. He just stood there though, still clenching the knife and having that 1,000-yard stare. Honestly, I think I was even more terrified because he clearly wasn't some normal guy. There was no predicting what he might do. The counter I was at was L-shaped, extending toward the back where he was. So to run away, I'd actually have to run a couple feet toward him and around the counter, then back toward the front door. With him only being 5 feet from me, he could easily grab me or attack me if I tried. So I did the next best option. I basically dove over top the counter. It wasn't pretty, but I guess it kind of worked. I slammed into the ground and got up. The guy was already sprinting at me with a face of uncontrollable bloodlust and rage. I ran out the door and only got a few seconds away before I heard him get out the door as well. He was too close for me to even try getting inside my car, which was behind the building. I just kept running, making it to the road and hoping a car might drive by and help. But at some point he stopped chasing. I don't know when because I was so focused on sprinting and not looking back. I called the cops and waited at the road for them to get here. It took about 5 minutes. The guy was gone, but I guess after chasing me, he went back inside the shop and just demolished the place. Everything was trashed and he left out the back door where he then scraped his knife all over the side of my car. It's likely he was watching me inside the shop through the windows from a distance and using the door as a distraction, hoping to slip in without being noticed. Admittedly, it worked perfectly, which makes me feel pretty dumb. It's also pretty creepy knowing that there was about an hour gap between the last time the door rang and when I saw him, so he was probably hiding inside the shop that whole time. It's really strange though, because I really had no idea who he was. I really thought he was just some random guy, but his actions seemed oddly directed toward me. Maybe it was just a wrong place, wrong time sort of thing. I don't know. They never found him. I didn't stay working there very long after that, fearing that he might come back. This was a couple years ago, when I was working 2 jobs to save up for a condo. I had a stable 9-to-5 full-time gig, but did deliveries as a way to make a little bit extra cash whenever I had time.